Everybody understands that it's the people who win the war, that they tell the story of what happened, what went down. In that scenario, winning the war is not the goal. The goal is to be able to tell the story. The movie industry allows the story to be told the way they want it to be told. The winners of wars write the story. The movie industry is designed to tell a particular story over and over again. Look at the Quentin Tarantino movies. How many times, how many World War I movies do we see? How many World War II movies do we see? The stories of the movie industry, just as the stories in the public education system, are designed to tell the story of the victor, the victors of consciousness. If you tell the story of consciousness over and over again from the perspective of a lower form of consciousness, eventually that lower frame of consciousness will become the highest frame of consciousness because of the way the story has been told. Once the ability to tell the story has been achieved, the next chapter is to design a story that doesn't need to be told. Design a story that is an experience. And in that experience, just as the goal before wasn't to win the war, the goal was to tell the story. As you're having an experience in this space of time, we think it's the experience. We are sold the experience. But that's not the goal. The goal is to consume our time. And in consuming our time, we have consumed our own consciousness at the expense of our own experience and those who have come before us and those who are coming after us. This is why the story of the past needs to be told a certain way, the story of the present needs to be told a certain way, and the story of the future not only needs to be told a certain way, but needs to be evolving and involved in both the past and the present at the same time as it's being developed into this idea of the future. Once you have the ability to tell the stories, now you have the ability to tell a story that will create a space that doesn't allow other stories to exist, because the time has been consumed by the stories of those who won the war on consciousness. So the story that has been installed into society is a survival mechanism based upon our most rudimentary form of consciousness, which is the body consciousness. Once the mind and the spirit becomes more evolved, the body requires less because there is now energy coming from a higher source. The body on its own requires energy from lower sources only to maintain its baseline survival primal purposes. The problem with only striving for those primal purposes is that the body consciousness antenna will eventually consume all of the frequencies if all of your attention and time is focused on that one version of consciousness. So on one end, you have the government that is destroying life, and on the other end, you have the government that is claiming to promote life with all of the government programs and so on and so forth. This is the perfect business model for the government because they have an everlasting chain of profit based upon ignorance. And all they have to do is evolve the story, and we tell the story to ourselves and our future generations. So like technology, was made the goal of Western society and underhandedly humanity. That's how they're selling it. Technology, going to space, going to the stars. This is the goal of our entire experience. Why are we here? Why were you born? Why do you have a soul? Ultimately, that's why they're saying this. When you really boil it down to how deep this stuff goes, when the Western world is focusing all of its attention and energy on technology and the Western ideologies at the expense of the people, the masses of people who are dying in these wars and dying of poverty. When they are doing that and telling you that this is a democracy and you're doing this, they're really saying that the meaning of this entire reality, the meaning of this entire realm, is to evolve the so-called human experience for the sake of inventing technology to leave this place, to go into another illusion. Beyond that, the point is, there is a purpose in this society that has not been acknowledged, but is geared towards. Everything in this reality is geared towards what the Western ideologies have deemed to be the goals of our experience, to be the goals of our souls. Is the goal of your soul to get your ass to Mars? Is the goal of your soul to protect a flag that is colored with the blood of your ancestors? These are the stories that the system wants to be told. There's an intelligence behind picking this particular situation, picking this particular individual. There's an intelligence there that stems straight out of the System of Racism, White Supremacy Encyclopedia, their guidebook of how to control the masses, how to manipulate emotions. Look at the emotion that's in this individual's face. Look at the emotion behind him. This is extremely beneficial to what? To who? To what storyline? It's extremely counterproductive to whose storyline? Dark matter intelligence. They have no idea what it is. Yet it makes up 98, 99% of the universe. This is the intellect and information that exists inside of the people, inside of our connections to the ancestral intelligence of this reality. It's not something to be cast away and thrown away because people like the idea of super nice and super technologically based aliens and extraterrestrials from the Pleiades, super conscious beings from the 9th dimension. We haven't even understood the elementary basics of this dimension, and people are escaping into other dimensions. Those are the short circuits of misguided spiritual practices, having not dealt with foundations before they start to build on top of those unstable foundations. This is why it's so crucial to focus on the healing part before the building part. The system wants you to focus on the building part because that is what they are equipped for. So that's why the old stories of industry have to be created all the time. The industry is the consciousness of codependency on that system. It's entirely profit-based at the expense of nature. So down to the family structure, the family dynamics. The same way technology infiltrates the family dynamics and starts to poison in many different ways the individual and the relationships that they have with each other in the family environment and beyond. The same way technology infiltrates that relationship is the same way the survival consciousness within the inner cities, the designed inner cities, the designed slums, the designed ghettos, the designed chaos, the communities of chaos, on purpose, redlining, the Homestead Act, the head right system. These were all government programs designed to divide and conquer through the idea of democracy and capitalism. No, it was racism, white supremacy in a suit and tie instead of in a hood. The same way technology was designed to become more of the individual's lives than the actual family dynamic and connection they have with themselves. That same algorithm is designed in the hustle consciousness that comes as a result of living in the primal, survival, basic, self-destructive environments that have been pre-designed by the system. In that relationship, you have mothers and fathers who have zero time with their children. Those children get sucked out onto the streets, or they get sucked out into the education systems. When you're in the cities, it's both. We have the attack of the education system, which goes against ourselves, creates self-hatred. It doesn't do that for other people. Self-hatred is being promoted in society right now through the public education system. Self-hatred is the Christopher Columbus story. Self-hatred is Christopher Columbus Day, Thanksgiving. Self-hatred is Black History Month. The image that you're looking at right now is self-hatred. When that self-hatred exists on multiple levels of consciousness within the individual and the family units, it creates a divide not only within the family like technology does, but it creates a divide within the individual that doesn't exist in the other people who have not been catered to at the expense of other people. This is the definition of white privilege. The privilege that exists without having to be quantified by anything else. It doesn't have to be quantified. It is known that this exists. So when you say the term white privilege and somebody responds with, I'm living tough and I have a hard time finding a job now and so on and so forth, that's a deflection. It's a defense mechanism to control the conversation. So they will bombard you with senseless distraction and information that has nothing to do with where you're really coming from. The education system itself is that distraction. It is that type of behavior. This image that you're looking at right now is an example of all the other images that are out there that are designed to do the same thing. Movies are examples of this image. Misguided individuals, people who are goofy, or people who are the same way that society has to effeminize the indigenous man, has to turn that man into a joker, an idiot. Everybody's seen those car commercials where there's a whole bunch of people talking about their reactions to a vehicle. And then at the end of the commercial, you have one usually white man of authority that says, you should buy this vehicle. Why? Because look at all these other people who look just like you. And at the end of the day, I'm the one that tells you what to do. Trust me, buy a Ford. In these hotel commercials, they have this mid-20s, early 30s-year-old white woman who the only reason why she's on any kind of commercial is because she plays a good, confident white woman. That's a character in consciousness. A very confident white business woman who speaks very direct and very sharp and very square, and she knows how to get things done. And in order to make her have more authority in society, she needs to be surrounded by a bunch of incompetent, other than white women. So they do this commercial with an Asian woman. They do this commercial with an indigenous woman, so-called black woman. But we never realize what's always the standard. The standard of how you interpret reality is of the Western consciousness. Primal codependency is the goal of the system. Survival codependency. In order to maintain that, they have to maintain a consciousness that is of an adolescent level. The adolescent consciousness that isn't smart enough, isn't experienced enough to lead with the ambition from the internal intelligence. There is no access to the internal intelligence. There's not even a knowledge of the internal intelligence. There is only a system of survival. Food, water, shelter, clothing, love. And love is also used as a manipulation tool in society because that's connected to survival. Survival of your people, survival of the story. Stories are told by speaking the stories. In order to speak those stories, you have to have a lineage of speakers. In order to have a lineage of speakers, you have to reproduce. This system of reproduction is very complex. It involves many different characters. It has a lot of moving parts involved in this. Those moving parts have been commercialized. Sex has been commercialized. The feminine body has been commercialized. The masculine body has been commercialized. Love has been commercialized. The home has been commercialized. Motherhood has been commercialized. Fatherhood has been commercialized. And not only has it been commercialized, have they been commercialized, but they have also been told, those stories have been told to us in a way that is in itself commercial and counterproductive to the way our ancestors told us the stories of this reality. In that backwards and upside down interpretation of this reality, we lose the most precious parts of ourselves because we no longer have access, conscious access to the deepest and most crucial parts of ourselves, the highest expressions of ourselves. This is how higher dimensional beings can be controlled by lower dimensional entities. Once the lower dimensional experience has been accepted by higher dimensional beings, they need only to be told the story over and over again in order for them to tell the story to their future generations. If that story gets challenged in any kind of way, they will destroy those who try to tell other stories. And they will play the victim once you tell your story. When you share that story, the insecurities of those individuals will drive them to the deepest layers of their primal instincts. And that's what will suck them down into lower forms of consciousness. This is how you can have intelligent beings being okay with destroying their own environment. In this world, the only thing that matters is passing on through the physical genetic material the lowest form of consciousness. The next generations need to be indoctrinated into this lower form of consciousness. If they try to work their ways into higher forms of consciousness, they will be a threat to the society. They will be outcast, and they will be demonized in order to maintain the discussion that maintains the mass mind control.